The weight of a broken hearing aid. The classroom was quiet, the fluorescent lights humming overhead like a dying insect. I sat at my desk, my fingers tracing the smooth curve of my hearing aid, my lifeline. It was the only thing that let me hear my friend's laughter, my mom's voice on the phone, the way the rain tapped against the window. Without it, I was just another kid in a world that already felt too loud. Then the sound of a bootstep. Mr. Hayes stood at the front of the room, his face unreadable. He picked up the hearing aid from my desk, his fingers brushing against mine, just for a second, before he crushed it under his heel. The plastic shattered like glass, the tiny parts scattering across the floor. The kids in the back of the room stifled giggles. A few whispered among themselves. Mr. Hayes didn't even look up. "Clean it up," he said, his voice flat like he was talking about a stray piece of paper. I didn't move. I couldn't. The weight of the hearing aid in my palm had been my whole life, since the day the doctor had told me I'd never hear normally again. It wasn't just a device. It was my connection to the world. And now it was gone. The kids filed out, their footsteps echoing down the hall. I didn't wait for them. I didn't want to see their faces. Too many of them had already turned away, already forgotten how to speak to someone who needed a hearing aid. I didn't want to see Mr. Hayes either, but I had to. He was standing by the door, watching me like I was some kind of monster. "Please," he said, his voice trembling. I didn't mean to. I didn't let him finish. I turned and ran, my legs moving faster than my brain could process what was happening. The hallway stretched endlessly, the walls blurring together. I didn't stop until I was outside, the cold air biting at my cheeks. My hands shook so badly I could barely open the door. My mom was at the kitchen table stirring coffee. My dad was on the phone, his face tight with something I couldn't read. They didn't need to ask. The second they saw me, they knew. I didn't even have to say it. I just collapsed into my dad's arms, my body shaking, my voice breaking. "It's my fault," I sobbed. "I'm so sorry." Dad held me tight, his hand steady on my back. "Not your fault," he said, his voice steady, like he was already fighting back tears. "Tell me what happened." So I did. Every ugly detail. How I'd left it on my desk, how Mr. Hayes had walked in without knocking, how he'd crushed it without a word. I told him about the way the kids had laughed, about how the office had just told me to move on, like this was just another broken toy. My mom sat down beside me, her hands pressing into my shoulders. "It wasn't your fault," she whispered. "He shouldn't have done that." But I knew better. I'd seen the way he looked at me, like I was some kind of burden, like I was the reason he was teaching in a room that didn't even have a working sound system, like I was the reason his voice was always too quiet for his students to hear. The next morning the doorbell rang. I opened it, half expecting to see the school's disciplinary officer, but it was Mr. Hayes. He stood there, his face pale, his hands sweating in the cold. His eyes were wild, desperate. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I thought it was headphones. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked at him, then at the broken pieces I'd swept into a bag the night before. The plastic was still warm from the heat of my hands. I thought about the way the hearing aid had amplified my mom's voice when she called, the way it had let me hear the words my friends whispered in the hallway. I thought about the way I'd been so used to needing it that I didn't even realize how much it meant until it was gone. Dad stepped up behind me, his voice low. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you destroyed my son's medical equipment." Mr. Hayes turned to me, his eyes pleading. "I didn't know. Please." I shook my head. "No." The door closed behind him, sealing him out. I never forgave him. And that's the truth, that some things can't be fixed with an apology. Some mistakes cost more than anyone's prepared to pay. And some people, once they've hurt you, can never be trusted to fix it.